We're going to be talking about self-regulation and some practical tools that you can use to help your child to regulate. We have Dr. Jenny with us here today. She is an autism educator, therapist, and advocate. Dr. Jenny, oftentimes as a therapist, I hear a lot of families talk to me about their child's difficulty with regulation. They have a really hard time, maybe they're at the grocery store and they have a full-blown meltdown, or they're at school and they're trying to focus, and then they fall apart. Or one that's very common is they're trying to do their homework at night. And because it's so hard for them to regulate, after a whole day of regulating, they fall apart and homework can take up to 4 hours. So what does somebody do with that? How do you help a child to regulate?
That's such a great question. And the first thing before anything else is to make sure that you as a parent get regulated yourself. And so if a child is having a meltdown in the supermarket, for example, if that then makes you angry, anxious, that might come out in a way that's not supportive of your child. But if you take that moment to make sure that you are calm, regulated, alert in your mind and body, you can then approach your child in a way that's that much more compassionate, where you're understanding their perspective, and you find a way to co-regulate and to continue on with whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's homework, but you need to be regulated yourself before anything else. You won't be able to help your child if you are not regulated.
Sure. So the first thing I'm hearing is make sure that we're calm, make sure that our bodies are regulated in this secure base. Then what? How do we get ahead of the meltdowns? How do I help my child?
That's a really great question. So one of the best ways to do it, especially if you have a child, if you know triggers that might come up for your child, just be very aware of those throughout the day. So if you're going to a supermarket and you know that your child very much dislikes those sliding doors, that's something I hear all the time, then perhaps you find another entrance that doesn't involve those. So being aware of what your child needs and what might spark some of those meltdowns that can really allow you to prepare for them. And that can be personalized for each child. So if you know that your child doesn't like loud sounds, for example, maybe you do bring in those headphones into the supermarket. Or if you know that your child really hates when they have a whole hour of homework, maybe you can break that up for them. But once you know what your child's triggers are, you can be ahead of it. And then just knowing your child and putting yourself in their shoes to really understand, what are they thinking right now? What are they feeling? What are they experiencing? Allows you to much more compassionately approach your child in a way that will help them to co-regulate and move forward successfully.
Wow. So that's such great information. And the thing I kept thinking about as you were talking was just this need to be curious, right? This need to, so often those meltdowns can feel behavioral. And what I'm hearing you say is that it actually could have a sensory root, that they're becoming overwhelmed. And so, I know sometimes I'll have a family that I'm working with take, on their phone, take notes or start to be really curious about those triggers and start to write them down so they can notice patterns. And then they could do, what you were talking about, personalizing care, right?
Absolutely. Yes, so often behaviors are like that tip of the iceberg, but there's so much happening underneath. So if a child's having a meltdown, I love that you use the word curious, because that's what we have to do, and wonder, is it sensory related? Is it anxiety? Is it a memory that just came up from another not pleasant experience? So what is causing it? Because unless we know what's causing it, it's really hard to help it.
So what's like a practical tool or concept that maybe, our families could start to use today?
Sure. Okay, so there's this new theory. It's called the Foundational Capacities for Development, also known as the 5 C's, which makes it a whole lot more understandable and easy to remember. But these 5 C's are really woven not only throughout the DIR approach, but they're woven throughout all of our lives, and they really sort of serve as a foundation for regulation. So they include comfort, so being comfortable in our body and our mind, being competent, so feeling a sense of accomplishment, like you can do something, confidence, approaching something with that, I can do this attitude. Control is another big one. So a child being able to control what's going on in their lives. And then also communication, sorry. I was gonna say comprehension, but they go hand in hand, but really communication can be so powerful. We want every child to have that ability to communicate who they are in the world.
So it sounds like, again, regulation feels like a physical thing, but these are all concepts we all want for the kids that we work with. Can you give an example, and I think specifically of control? I know oftentimes that's one that comes up. Control is bad. We're in control. We don't want them to feel like they're in control. Can you talk to an example of how you address that particular piece?
Sure, and control is so important for all of us, but especially for kids who typically don't have control over their lives. Imagine you're just sort of taken from place to place. You're told what to do all the time. So it is a natural human desire to have control over something. And when a child has no control, that's when we tend to see these examples of kids trying to control everything. So what we want to do there is sort of find a compromise in the middle, so allowing the child to have a sense of shared control. So maybe a child, wants to climb a bridge. Well, that's not safe, right? So we need to put down a boundary. So no, you can't climb that bridge, but maybe we can make a bridge at home. How does that sound? And maybe you'll get the answer of fine, because they didn't get what they originally wanted. But then you can see how else you can give them control. So, I wonder which room we should make that bridge in. So then they get to make that choice. I wonder what color our bridge should be. So you want to make sure that every child has some control over their lives, because otherwise they'll reach out for it in other ways. But if you work on it in terms of shared control, where you're still letting the child make those decisions, it can be really, really powerful. And we all need control in our lives.
Wonderful. So families, we challenge you. We challenge you to pay attention to these 5 C's. We challenge you to make sure that in a moment of chaos and crisis that you're checking in with your own body, making sure that you are regulated. Get curious about your child's triggers, start to write them down. And as always, if you're seeing that your child is dysregulating a lot, get connected with a therapist or a specialist in your area that could help you to even do some of that more personalized care. But again, that relationship is the most important part. And so lean in, regulate yourself, and allow that connection to do the healing work with your child.